Hello everybody, I'm Melissa and welcome back to Book Bar and welcome to another Trope Tuesday Trope recommendation video where today I will be talking about neighbors. So these are whether they're neighbors in an apartment, neighbors, next door neighbors, like whatever it may be, they are neighbors of some sort. So I have 10 recommendations as always and then 4 that are on my TBR. So we're just going to go ahead and get on into it. The first book that I have to say is The Choice by A Jade or A Jade. This is Memphis and Skylar. And so if you read the words, you met Memphis and Skylar both in the words. And then, so The Choice is the first part of a duet that has not yet been released, the second part, but it's the first part of a duet. And they grow up there, like it's them growing up as kids and like meeting each other and their history with each other and possibly their little bit of a love triangle with Memphis's adopted brother. So yeah, it's very good, angsty, emotional, tension filled, but fantastic nonetheless. So, and there is rumors that the next book will be coming out in May, but I don't know yet, so we shall see. Sorry if the angle changed slightly. My neighbor decided to start mowing the lawn, so I stopped filming. But next up is Fractured Sky by Cowles. This is Shiloh and Ramsey. And if you read the first book in the series, you know that Shiloh was kidnapped as a child and has PTSD from that and is very like withdrawn from everyone and quiet and doesn't like engage as much as everyone else in the family does. And I mean, it makes sense. And then, but she does like go to Ramsey's ranch all the time and like watch him with the horses. And Ramsey is a convicted felon, but he was wrongly convicted, I believe. And he owns like a horse ranch, horse rehabilitation. And he has like an extra apartment, kind of like little like cottage house on his land, and he tells Shiloh that she can come live with him because he knows that she kind of needs to get away from her family and that's the way that she's gonna grow. So they become neighbors because she ends up living on his land. So yeah, it's a beautiful story. I definitely suggest reading the series in order. My favorite book is actually the second book, but I do love it, this whole series. And like, just look how beautiful that cover is. Stunning. Next up is Stay With Me by Alexandria House. This is Angela and Ryan, and Angela is actually Ryan's landlord, but they do live next door to each other, kind of like. So Angela, I believe, is an influencer. I believe, yeah, she's a hair influencer or some sort. She's an influencer, and her family had given like her and her sisters all money for various things, and she bought property, and so she bought this like duplex, and so she owns one side and she owns both sides, but she rents the other side out, and she rents it out to this guy Ryan, and her and Ryan end up forming a bond, and of course things go from there. It was a great time. I've really enjoyed that series so far. Excited. I need to still read the third sister, but I will say I was more interested in the sisters than Ryan and Angela, but it definitely like started it all, so yes. Next up is Morbidly Yours by Ivy Fairbanks. This is Callum and Lark, and Lark's husband had just passed away, and so she moves to Ireland to kind of get away, and she ends up living next door to Callum. And on the first day in town, she gets a delivery and it's a bunch of body bags, and she's very confused. Learns that it actually belongs next door, which is a mortuary that is owned by Callum. And Callum and Lark become very close because Callum needs to marry someone by his next birthday, or he's going to lose everything. He's going to lose the mortuary, the cemetery, his house, his job, everything. He's going to lose it all. He doesn't want to do that. So he has to get married because it is a stipulation in his grandparents' will that he needs to be married. So yeah, him and Lark spark up a friendship and things go from there, and it is just, it's so good. It does deal heavily with grief though, so do know that, because obviously she is grieving the loss of her spouse and he is grieving the loss of his grandparents, and but I believe Callum was demisexual, so very, I don't know if the representation is good. It seemed good to me, so yeah, take that with a grain of salt though, because I am not Own Voices, and I don't believe that this author is Own Voices. I could be wrong though. I don't know for sure. I don't think authors need to disclose their sexual identity, so yeah, I don't know what I'm saying. But it was good. I really enjoyed it. This is the indie edition. It did just get picked up by a publisher, so do know that. I don't think the new edition is out yet, but it was very good. I really enjoyed it. So when it does come out, pick it up. Next up is Meet Me Halfway by Lillian T. James, and this follows Madison and Garrett. And Maddie is a single mom, and she had her baby when she was 16 from someone who she thought she loved, and then and I believe he left, and she ended up just marrying someone, or maybe it was the baby daddy, the baby's father. I don't remember exactly, but she was in an abusive relationship. And she finally gets out and goes and ends up living next door to Garrett. And she is working like 3 jobs, studying, doing all this stuff. And obviously she has her son. And one day she gets home and there's a note, a kind of nasty note left on her door by her neighbor. And he is very grumpy and doesn't want anything to do with this young single mom and her son. But things just go from there, of course. I really enjoyed it when I read it last year. I need to continue that series because the second book did come out. But yeah, it was a really good time. And it's a good neighbor romance. Next up, we have Neighborly by Katrina Jackson. This is a Black love romance that does have, it's cheating, but it's not. So basically, this follows 2 couples. This follows Heaven and Calvin. Is it Haven and Calvin? Heaven and Calvin? I don't know. And Tasha and Steven. And Tasha and Steven are not older, but they are a more mature couple, have been together for a very long time, and they end up renting out, I believe, or maybe Tasha and Calvin, or Heaven and Calvin just bought the house next door, but whatever. So now they end up being neighbors with Heaven and Calvin. And Tasha and Heaven have a little bit of an attraction to each other. And turns out their walls are very thin. You can hear everything. And they're attracted to each other. And you know what? Their partners are totally okay with it. The communication between the 4 of them was absolutely phenomenal. I loved it. So it is a little bit of a polyamorous relationship situation. There's Calvin and Steven never do anything, but Heaven and Tasha do. So yeah, it is very steamy, very good. It's a novella, but yeah, I had a great time with it. Next up is The Air He Breathes by Brittainy Cherry. This whole series, which they're all standalones, they're only connected by the fact that they're the elements. So it's air, fire, gravity, earth, basically, and water. So the whole series is fantastic, and it just got picked up by a publisher. But this is technically the first book. I thought it was the second book, but it's the first book. And this is about Tristan and Elizabeth. And both Tristan and Elizabeth are dealing with something very tragic that had just happened to both of them. And they end up neighbors, and, they use each other as, they use each other to help with their grief. And then, of course, things go from there. But yeah, I really enjoyed this, and I want to reread it now, but I'm talking about it. But yeah, they are neighbors. Do you know that? And it did just get picked up, but I do love this cover. Ugh. But yeah, fantastic neighbor romance. Next up is Blitz by Devney Perry, and this one is, I read this for my reading a March new releases vlog. I'll have that up there. But this is Jensen and Torin, and Torin is an assistant coach at the Treasure State for the Treasure State football team, and he every year has this party on the 4th of July because he has a great spot, he has good land and a great spot to watch the fireworks from. So he has a party every year. And at this party, he meets this mysterious young girl, or she seemed, yeah, this mysterious girl. She's not young, but like younger girl. And they end up having a passionate night together. And then a couple weeks later, it's the first day of school, or it might not even be the first day of school, but he is back at work for the football team. And last season had been, there had been a lot of drama and stuff surrounding the football coach that was there, was no longer there. And so there are lots of rules put in place now about fraternization and things. And on that, like, and the volleyball coach comes around and is introducing her new star player who just transferred from Stanford. And turns out that it is Jensen. And Jensen happens to be his, also happens to be his new neighbor. And Torin and Jensen just cannot stay away from each other, no matter how badly they want to, because they know they cannot do anything, even though he is not technically her coach. He's still a coach at the school, and it is not allowed for them to be together. But yeah, it was a good time. I really enjoyed it. Next up, we have In a Jam by Kate Canterbary. This is Shay and Noah, and Shay was left her step-grandmother's farm, but there is one stipulation: she needs to get married. And so she goes to this farm, and she reconnects with her high school best friend, Noah. Well, it turns out Noah has always kind of had a thing for Shay, and he is like, well, why don't we get married? Like, I'll marry you, marriage of convenience, help you out, you can keep your land. And so she agrees, and they get married. But you know, she's helping raise his niece that he's raising because his sister got into some trouble. So he's raising his niece, and she starts helping because she is a teacher, and his niece is nowhere near ready for the next grade she needs to go into because she just doesn't care about school. She has a potty mouth. She wants to be a pirate. It was fun. It was hilarious. But yeah, I really enjoyed it, and definitely a good like neighbor romance because they start out as neighbors, of course, then they get married, so things go from there. But yes. And then the last book that I have is To Hate Adam Connor by Ella Maise. This is Adam and Lucy, and Lucy is staying with her best friend who was the heroine of To Hate Jason Thorne. I cannot think of what her name is, but she's staying at Jason's house, and Jason ends up with a new neighbor, and she gets caught spying on him and his son, and they end up not liking each other at first, but of course, you know, the line between love and hate, very, very thin, and, you know, of course, things are gonna go over there. But yeah, I really enjoyed that one. So another fun neighbor romance. So yeah, those are my 10 recommendations. I probably could do a second one of these. I probably will in a few months, because as I was like looking for my 4 on my TBR, there were books that I don't have shelved as neighbor romances that I'm like, oh yeah, there are neighbors in that. So yeah, I do need to go back and do another one. But now I'm going to talk about the 4 books that are on my TBR. Well, it's kind of 5. But the first one is The Wallflower Rager by Tessa. This is the Girl Meets Duke series. I read the other 2 books in the series. I think I've just been waiting to read this one because I want more information on when the bride bed is coming, because I don't want it to be over. And who knows when that book's coming out. But because this was released in 2019, and there has been no news on when the last book is coming out. We're now in 2024, so yeah. But this, I believe, is Penelope and Gabriel are their names. And I believe he ends up moving next door, and she kind of has like a menagerie. So yeah, we'll see what happens. I'm excited to read this one. I need to get to it. Next up is Wait For It by Mariana Zapata. I believe that this, from what I saw, it is a neighbor romance, but I believe it's also a baseball romance, which, if you know me, you know I love baseball romances, so definitely one I gotta get to. Then the next one is it's a duet, but it's Whatever It Takes and Wherever You Are by Krista and Becca Ritchie. These are the Eternal Embers editions, but I believe they end up roommates somehow, or neighbors somehow, because she's American and he's British, I believe. or opposite, I don't really know, but they end up as roommates. So, or why do I keep saying roommates? Neighbors. So yeah, I don't know. I'm excited to get to it though, and it will possibly be happening soon. Then the last one I have is Northern Stars by Brittainy Cherry. Again, Brittainy Cherry I think writes quite a few neighbor romances because The Silent Waters is also neighbors. I can't believe there's one other one that where they're neighbors, but Northern Stars is one that is on my TBR. I want to read all of Brittainy Cherry's backlist, so of course every book of hers that I have not read is on my TBR, so yeah. But that is all I have for now. What are some of your favorite neighbor romances? What are some that I could be forgetting? Or what are some that I should put on my TBR? If you made it to the end of this video, leave me a frog emoji. And don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, all the fun stuff. It really helps me out. And I will talk to you all in the next one. Bye.